We just had one hell of a pre-show where we all had to restart our computers, unplug, replug, try a bunch of different things, which has never happened. So, we're in for a good time. Buckle up. Buckle up.
Yeah.
Buckle up,
I think
everybody.
that it's a sign like when things break in the theater or that kind of thing. Like you
Is that
want
like a
something
break
bad
a
to
leg?
happen I
Oh, can I
guess.
tell you guys? I went to go see Twilight at the Alamo Draft House last night, and it was one of those things where it's like a movie party and everybody can like talk and
Yes.
things. And
Yeah. And you say the
during
quotes.
during like the scene, like not spoilers, sorry if you've never seen Twilight, I don't care.
Who
I
hasn't
think
seen
it's okay.
Twilight?
But they're like in the scene where Bella is like almost dying, the curtains of the theater closed and like it was like projecting onto the curtains. And it was like everyone was like, oh, losing their mind. It actually kind of, I feel like, made the experience better because it was like this totally chaotic moment in the middle of the chaotic scene. And you could
Gosh.
I
still see
like,
it.
I love it.
yeah, I like it. The drama.
Sometimes
There,
chaos adds drama. And
Well,
I
those are the vibes that we're bringing into this episode.
we are bringing the vibes for sure.
here for chaos and drama.
Yeah, we love to add that. When I actually went and saw Star Wars, the fire alarm went off like in the middle of the movie, and the premiere would not premiere, like red carpet, but like it was brand new, like the opening day or something. And I remember like the whole audience had to leave and then come back and like restart. I will never forget. It was such a weird experience in the, I don't know, 90s, I assume.
I like
And
that you had to clarify that you weren't at the premiere of Star Wars because
I know
otherwise we would
people.
have.
You guys have star power. I wouldn't question it. So
Oh, wow. That means a lot coming from you. You are a gem. We are so excited to chat with you today. Can you do a quick introduction for people who maybe can't recognize your voice? Because I think most of our community has been a fan of your work for a while.
oh yay. I'm gonna be so screwed when people make AI personalities off of like recorded stuff. It's gonna be
You got so much out there.
like a fake version of me. So that's not me giving you permission, internet. Okay. Anyway, my name is Jessica Hische. I'm a lettering artist by trade, but I'm also interested in a bunch of other things. But you might know my work from a lot of the commercial lettering projects that I do. I do movie titles and book covers and advertisements and all kinds of stuff for all kinds of clients. And then I also write and illustrate children's books, and I have 2 retail stores now.
Not a lot going
Oh,
on.
is that it?
Yeah. It's almost nothing. I mostly just go to the gym now and come to the office and talk on podcasts. That's it. That's what I do.
I know we
That
were
sounds
joking
great.
about movie premieres, but have you actually been to a movie premiere because of your movie lettering?
I have
Give us
not.
the scoop.
I
What the
have.
heck?
I know. Well, I have been to some cool events. For Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. We did like a press event where technically it was sort of a premiere-ish thing. It was a screening for press in New York that happened before the movie came out. And I did like an activation for that because I had done the titles, and then I made these like custom journals for all the people that were there, and it was really fun. So I did that. When Moonrise Kingdom came out, I didn't get a ticket to the premiere because title designers are inconsequential compared to the rest of this cast and staff. So we all went to see it the day that it came out, and it was awesome. And then when my name came up on the screen, yeah, everybody cheered.
That's
It was
cool.
so fun. But I have been able to go to some interesting events and things like that. I went to CAA. They have a Friday night Oscar party, and I designed the invitation for them for a few years in a row. So I got to go to their Oscar party, which was dope. I also got to go to a screenwriting award that I did posters for that was part of the Academy, and that was cool.
So some good celebrity sightings.
But the CAA thing was unreal. I thought it was going to be
constant.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be like going to like Adobe Max or something where it's just like thousands of randos and wonderful randos. And then like the 15 or 20 people that are like the celebs that are there speaking. But it was like only celebrities, and it was really weird.
Did you talk to them?
I did not the first year. I was a like statue in the corner, like terrified to talk to anyone. I think I talked to some really important movie executive, but then the second year I think that's the year that I talked to Scarlett Johansson because I was like really pregnant and I was complaining.
How tall is she?
She's short. Well, I'm 5'6", but I wear heels all the time. So I'm like 5'9" for all intents and purposes. And she was shorter than me by a few inches. So I think she's 5'4".
Why is that your
That's funny.
question, Katie?
It just always fascinates me. Like when you see people on screen, they seem like they're all like 6 foot tall. And then
Okay,
in
no, not at
person, you're
all.
like, what? My husband and I have
So-
gone on like rabbit holes where we just like ask Siri different celebrities' heights for like an hour. And we're just like, whoa, what about
Everybody,
this person?
most people are quite short. That's like the answer.
Yeah.
But no, it was really interesting. And she was very nice. We were waiting in line. It was at this, you had the parking area was different than the party. And you had to take like a shuttle up to the party because it was all very private and at like this mansion. And so we were all waiting in line for like cars and the shuttle and whatever. And I was complaining about how tired I was because I was really pregnant. And she like turned around to look at me, like because she heard me complaining about being tired. And then she saw that I was pregnant. And then she was just like, oh my God, it's so tiring. Right. And then we had this like whole like little mini conversation about having horrible insomnia. And that was like my main celeb thing. I also got a picture with Neil Patrick Harris one year. And who else? There were a couple of other people. The one thing that I remember really clearly, Jennifer Lopez was there, and she's literally the most beautiful person I've ever seen ever in my life. Like
Yeah, that
it was
tracks.
just, like, it was
Just
wild.
radiate.
She was radiant. I was just like looked in this room and it was just like she was like a light emanating from the center of the room, and everybody else looked great, but she just like looked so great. It was kind of unreal. So
Do you remember making the music video on MTV for Jennifer Lopez Waiting for Tonight?
I don't remember that, but I remember
Not
the
that
video
specific
very
one, but
clearly. I remember the
that-
music. I don't remember the making of.
That was like a pivotal moment where I was like, I'm going to design music videos. I like genuinely thought that's what I was going to do. And then I was also going to be the lead dancer in them, which like I'm not a terrible dancer, but like certainly not a professional dancer by any degree. That music video really stuck with me. That was like the first glimpse into like what an art director or like anything in the creative world as a job. I thought that was so cool. When you introduced yourself, you said all of these wonderful titles that we all know you to be a part of. Have you ever felt, well, am I more of a this or am I more of that? Or have you just kind of gone with the flow and like figured you'll figure it out as you go?
I go with the flow, but I'm very conscious of like what people perceive me as being something that I have to control, mostly because if you do too many things and you're not known for any one particular thing, it's like really hard to get work as like someone who's self-employed, because you need to be someone that's like, oh, that person does this. And like whenever that thing that you do comes up in conversation, they need to think of you for that thing. So if you're kind of a jack of all trades, then your name won't come up except as like a fixer. You'll be the person that's like, oh, just bring so-and-so on, they can figure it out, but those projects are so rare where it's just like a general creative that will figure something out, that I do feel that the people need to know that I am a lettering artist that does client work. Because even with how people present themselves on Instagram and things like that, there's so many folks, even within the lettering world, that most of what they share is not client work. And that's like, cool, I'm happy for them. But at the same time, it's like, I want it to be very, very clear that I am here for client work, that I enjoy it, that I'm not trying to do like influencery stuff outside of that very much. And it's just like, that's what you should come to me for, to hire me for. So I try to be like very clear about that perception.
Has that also been impacted by you being a parent? Because I know when I became a parent, before I was a parent, I was like, I'm just going to make content so that more people find me. And now I'm like, if I need to make something, if I want to do something for fun, like it's not for social media, it's not for growing. My platform is for getting client work and connecting with my community, obviously. Did that align with becoming a parent, or has that been a factor in it?
I don't know if it actually has to do with becoming a parent or if it's just like however many years you have in the industry, because for the first 5 years that you are practicing in any field, you're just so jazzed about that field that you can just like spend all day, every day, only thinking and dreaming about everything within that world. And then at a certain point, it becomes a job a little bit, like you still love it, but it's not where it's just like, oh, every second of my day, it must be like filled and fueled by this thing that I'm passionate about, and that's totally fine. That's like a normal life cycle. I think if we maintained that level of enthusiasm, we wouldn't have space for other things in our life. I barely, at that time in my life when I was like the most enthused about making work, like barely had space for my partner, like barely had space for friends. And now I make a lot of space for not only my family and my kids and stuff, but like connecting with friends and trying different things and taking care of my body and self and reading, you know, and trying to do like a lot of different stuff. It's just like you run out of time if you have other interests. And then it's like any time that you're spending on social media becomes this needs to serve my career and isn't just me having like social media be this fun creative outlet anymore, because I have so many other fun creative outlets that like I don't necessarily want to share, because if I share the fun creative outlets on
Not fun anymore.
well, one, it's not fun anymore, but also two, then people get this weird perception of like, oh, Jessica's not doing as much lettering now because she's learning ice dancing or whatever. And that's such a thing, because I'm sure you noticed, Ilana, that when you became a parent, at first it was like, oh, let's share about the baby, let's share about the baby. But then eventually you have to stop and then kind of like delete any record of the baby, because otherwise like people will look on your social media and be like, oh, she's only working part-time now, or she's not in the studio, or like whatever. It's this weird, stupid thing that happens mostly to moms. And so I didn't ever have to curate my life online before being a parent, but I think it was also kind of just a part of hitting my 10-year mark or whatever in my career and just being like, I am not thrilled about sitting in the studio and making art just to get likes. It just does not thrill me.
Yeah, that for sure doesn't resonate with me. And I do know, and you know, Katie and I both really acknowledge that social media is a huge tool. You can use it how you want to use it, and you can use whichever tool you want to use. You can use LinkedIn, you can use your website, you can use cold email, you can use whatever you want, whatever works for you. But I've definitely struggled with that more. And I think part of that is like a demographic, like when you graduated and when you started on social media. For me, definitely being a parent has had an impact on that. But I love what you said about just like making space in your life for other things that are fun. And I'm curious, we already know now you're a gym girly. So what other things have you done? Because I think you do a really good job, or at least it's perceived that way, that you do a really good job of keeping your work fun because you have all of these different revenue streams, which we'll talk about in a second. But what things in your life besides ice dancing, apparently? What things? I love that for you.
A reality, but it is a dream.
I love that. Katie actually used to be I don't know, how do you describe it, Katie? Roller skater.
Yeah, it's the full definition is roller figure skater. So we did like everything that the ice skaters do, but on roller skates. So the jumping and the spinning and figures, like tracing circles and doing weird turns and stuff on them. And there were all sorts of events. It was like an underground group of us. It's really weird.
It sounds so badass, but yeah, I'm curious what other things, like, are you making sourdough? Are you,
aren't you in karate?
I am in karate. I have karate tonight.
That was so cool.
I know that. So anybody, I'm going to plug my newsletter because I have the least marketing newsletter that exists, which is just me writing to you like you're my pen pal and I'm catching you up.
I love that.
I don't know if you guys get these now or yet or whatever, but like, you know, occasionally you'll get like a holiday card from someone and they include a like printed out thing about their life. And like, this year we went to Disney World and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like this little like one sheet that's about like, here's what we did this year. Hope your year was great, whatever. I feel like all of my emails have the tone of the holiday card that has like too much information you didn't actually care about in the holiday card.
I love that for you.
And so I did talk about my karate adventures in my most recent newsletter, which is that I never once in my life wanted to take karate, but my children begged me to sign them up for karate at this dojo that is near our house that does one-on-one training, because all the other ones, like the times are weird. One thing that when you become a parent, like all the activities for children are at like 3 p.m. in the afternoon, because the world is still designed for like a stay-at-home parent to be a part of the mix. We can only do stuff like after school, like, you know, or after aftercare, you know, 5:30 or whatever, or on the weekends. I had both of my 2 older kids in karate, and then it just became this like annoying, miserable thing for them where like my daughter was like, my knee hurts every single time there'd be something on her body that would prevent her from enjoying it. And then my son, who like probably has ADD, like couldn't pay attention to save his life. He was just space cadet mode and like whatever all over the place. And so eventually a month went by. I was like, do you guys want to stop doing this? And they were like, but I had prepaid for the year because you got like 20% off if you just prepaid for the year. And it was not cheap. It was like $3,500 or something for like a year of lessons. And I was like, we're not throwing away $1,500. So
you tell them.
Yeah, I was like, mom's going to start taking karate and you guys are going to get jealous of me. And that's it. You're a quitter and I'm not a quitter. And so I started taking karate by myself. And then my middle, who was the one that the attention span boy, he got super crazy FOMO for me doing karate and him not doing karate. So he was like, can I come back and do karate? And I was like, I'm not sure. And I was going to lie to him because I was enjoying it and being like, sorry, they said no, because I was like, I'm doing karate now. But I think I even like made a comment about that on Threads, and a bunch of like very thoughtful parents chimed in and were just like, it's very special to spend time with your son and that he wants to spend with you. And I was like, you're right, I guess. So
we love the parenting experts coming in and saving the day, don't we?
yeah. So I let him rejoin with me and we've been doing it ever since. And it's been quite fun. And the teacher is so nice to him and she's so mean to me. She's constantly like, well, I wouldn't have let them quit in the first place. You know, just these little comments and things like that.
You pissed her off.
She's a real badass person. She's really good. And we have like one of the top teachers that's our teacher. And she's just constantly like, excellent work, Charlie. I've never seen such good covers in my life. Mom, you need to work on your stances. And that's just not how I respond to feedback. Like I'm like totally a compliment sandwich person. Like you have to just praise the hell out of me for me to feel motivated. And so,
Yeah,
oh my God. There's this teacher or this coach at my gym. Our gym is like only classes. I go with my husband every time. And we have this running joke because he'll walk past both of us and go, oh, Jared, beautiful form. And then he doesn't say anything to me. And it happens the entire time. Like he hasn't given me one compliment or one bit of feedback, except for like, he'll go, push harder, don't stop, keep going. But he's like, Jared, love your form. I'm like, what the heck?
I would say something. I would be like, what about me? I would definitely be calling someone out.
We just start laughing because it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. But I love
that. The moral
that.
of the story is praise us all.
Yeah. Everybody needs praise. I feel like that's actually true though. That's why my internet persona is everybody needs praise. So I just praise and I'm nice. And
it feels really good to be appreciated and validated. I think you do that well. I think you show up for the community. And I think that's one of the things we want to do too, is like, we really want people to show up in our DMs. We really want people to leave a comment saying, check out my work, or we really want people to email us with questions. And I think you do the same. I know we've worked with you before and you've responded and people are like, oh my God, it's Jessica Hische. And I think it's a good reminder that we're all human at the end of the day, like regardless of what accolades or clout we have, at the end of the day, we are still human. And I did, when I was, 10, try and reach out to Hanson, because at the time they were obviously on a pedestal for me. Now, not so much. Yikes.
I was going to say, if you ever wanted to meet them, apparently you just have to go to Tulsa and hang out at this one coffee shop near there.
I truly don't want to meet them, knowing what I know now. But their like manager wrote back and my dad was like, oh, we got an email back. Now thinking back, it was like definitely like an automated message or something, but I like geeked. Like I could not.
That's so cute
control
that you wrote
myself.
Hanson. Oh,
I think I looked a little like Zach. I might have. He played percussion.
So you just identified with him?
I don't know why. I did for some reason.
I love that.
Anyway, okay, so we were talking about how you have so many different things that you can add to your resume, which, I mean, who makes a resume anyway? But we had some
When's the last time you used a resume?
I needed, you know what it is? The National Design Award, which they do like, nominations and stuff every year. Bless Debbie Millman. She keeps nominating me for it, even though there's like a % chance that I'm going to get it. And so like every single year I have to like put together this like portfolio and CV being like, so cool to spend 3 days doing this, knowing that there's a 0% chance.
Right. But Debbie Millman asked me to, so I do it.
I gotta do it. Yeah, exactly.
She's amazing.
Yeah. So sorry, I cut you off. I just burning question. When did
that's what we're here for the
last? Yeah.
We're here to learn the things about Jessica that other people haven't discovered. So I think that's a great question. So we had some questions about the multiple income streams you have, because we are always telling people why it's important to diversify. And I think one thing we've sort of touched on is that it's important to diversify for financial stability, but also for fun. It's not that fun to do the same thing all the time. So we're curious, which income stream is the most fun? Which one's the most lucrative? And which one is the biggest pain in the ass?
Totally. I feel like fun and lucrative is still kind of the client stuff, which is great. definitely lucrative. Like I'll do some side income thingy. Occasionally I could make like a good amount of money on it, but I feel like it usually can't pass one big juicy client project coming in terms of the amount of time and energy and effort that I'm getting versus the return. Online class stuff is also can be a really good income thing. But I'm very self-conscious about charging a lot for online classes, especially business classes. I'm like a weirdo where I charge $15 for my business classes or similar, like $35 or something. Whereas there's like a lot of folks in the community and in the design community that like charge $400 or $500 for like very similar content. So it could be like a much bigger bangerang financial stream, but I have this weird moral conundrum about charging people a lot of money for things that I feel like should be accessible to everyone. So I like just have a personal value thing about online classes and charging what I believe is like a very accessible price point, because especially for business related stuff, because I want everybody to be able to get it. And the people that benefit the most from it are people that don't have a ton of money currently. Every now and then that'll be like a big like boom, but I only really do that like once every year and a half or 2 years, because it is like a huge undertaking to put a really thorough class together. And I have to take a pause from doing other stuff in order to do that. The books are kind of medium. They're steady, but not crazy. I can just straight up get some numbers out to you. And so my kids' book stuff, I get paid twice a year for that. And I think my last couple royalty checks were like 16,000 or something like that. So it ends up being about like 32 or 35 a year, because I've earned out my advances on my first 2 books, but not my third book, which I probably won't.
I do read them with my kids, just so you know. And I don't know if you knew this, but one time I found them at Marshall's and I bought all of them.
Okay. That's
I was
fun.
like,
I like
wait,
that.
it's at Marshall's. I'm buying all of them. And I just keep it as gifts so that when I give it to my friends who are not designers, I can be like, this is my favorite designer. She was really influential to me and you'll love this book. And it's like a nice way to be like, this is something unique that I picked out and didn't just Amazon order for you.
I feel very lucky that the books make any money at all, because like the story about publishing is that most people, they get their advance for the book and then it never earns out. And then that's that. And a lot of advances for books are like $10,000 or like, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And then it's like you've spent 6 months working on a thing for $10,000 and then it never earns a cent past that. And that's like 90% of book releases. And then there's this middle ground, which I'm in, which is like not enough to replace like a regular income in terms of like living in the Bay Area or New York or like any sort of expensive place to live, but enough that it's like a really good supplementary thing. And then there's like the 0.01 percenters that are just like selling millions of copies of their books and they have a totally different view about publishing.
I really appreciate that transparency, because we did that summit artist to author, and we've also done another panel where during the conference where we talked to people, and there was such a range of people that we've spoken to in their experience. And I know for Katie and I too, I've worked with 2 different publishers and the range is literally like 0 to 100 of what.
Oh yeah, it's
what
crazy.
like. It's
because like my first book has done really well. That one, I think it's sold like 250,000 copies or something like that. But it's over the course of years, you know, because it came out in 2017 or 2018. So I think like that one, the first year I might have made like $60,000 or $80,000 on it, which was awesome. And then I did the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. They like brought it into that, but you don't get paid for each individual book for that. You just get like a flat fee. I think it was something like $17,000 or something like that. And then they print 200 something thousand copies of your book in like a different format and give them away for free, which is awesome because it's just great for, you know, spreading your book around. And then my second book did pretty well. It's like hasn't done as well as the first book. It's still done quite well. And then the third book has just tanked like nothing. I haven't hit the numbers for my pre-orders of my first 2 books yet, and it's been out for almost a year. So
wow. Why do you think that is? Do you have any theories or?
I do. I have 2 theories. One, when that book came out, social media was working against me because Instagram was like doing its major Reels push.
Yeah.
And that's part of it. It's not all of it though. The other part of it is just pure annoying SEO title reasons. So my first 2 books, I think one of the reasons why they remain, well, actually there's a third thing too. So one of the reasons why I think my first 2 books remain good sellers is because if people search Brave book it'll show up because brave is in the title, or kind book or whatever. Whereas the third title of my book is Who Will You Be? Like the letter U, which is not a very searchable thing. Like it would really only show up for someone if they were searching for books by me. And I'm not a famous children's book author. I'm like a well-known designer, but I'm not well-known within the children's space. People aren't searching for me in terms of kids' books that haven't already bought one of my other books. And so there's that. And then also even the cover design, I think a lot of people end up buying my first two books just because it has a big old word right on the front and it like photographs well and looks good in a nursery or whatever. Whereas the second book, it doesn't have that like, wow, single image moment, because my first book would like show up on like HGTV shows in the background of a nursery design or whatever. And it's just because it like photographs well. So it's just like those different factors, like the social media not prioritizing the content that was around the book, plus title stuff, plus the cover design itself. I think all those things like worked together. I have noticed a sort of course correction with Instagram though, where I feel like, because I do mostly like static image posts, I feel like I've been getting a lot more engagement recently for them. And so I think they are sort of like rebalancing the scales a little bit in terms of like video content versus static post content and surfacing it.
You mentioned all three of your children's books, but you didn't mention In Progress.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you didn't mention your gratitude journal.
Yes. Well, journals don't do very well in general.
Okay.
That's just something to know, apparently. That's what people have told me.
Okay.
So the gratitude journal is fine. That one suffered from, it got published via my children's book publisher.
Okay.
And so the ISBN says this is a children's book. And so instead of getting put on the shelf with other journals, it gets put in the children's section at bookstores.
Interesting.
Oh, that's weird.
And so then people, like most people, are not buying it at the bookstore because it's just shelved in the wrong section. So
that makes sense.
So that's something to consider when you're publishing, is who is the publisher and where will your book sit in terms of the rest of their catalog. Something you think about.
Some good intel.
Very good intel. And then my first book, it just went out of print. And so now it's out of print. You can't even get on Amazon anymore. I sell copies of it in my physical shop, and only because I went and bought like 100 copies of it off of Amazon at cost at the MSRP, and just planned to like sell them for no profit just to have them in the store. I'm almost out of my copies, and I went to re-up and now it's like totally gone. Now it's only the used copies. So
that's
wow.
crazy.
Now those are going to be worth a lot of money.
I actually gifted my copy to someone who was like starting out in their career. And now I'm like, I should ask for that back.
Yeah.
First edition. No, actually, it might not be a first edition, because with that one, the first edition, they only printed 5,000 copies. And then they just kept printing them, just like 1,500 copies or like 2,000 copies at a time after that.
Interesting.
It never sold crazy. It sold well as like a design book, but it was never like a blockbuster hit. And that's why they decided to stop printing it. They were like,
it makes sense that your children's books, like, not only will they resonate with designers who are like, look at this beautiful illustration and I want to read this to my kids because it has some special meaning to me, but also with anyone who has no idea who you are and is just looking for a beautiful book. And so it hits on so many more levels. And what you said about like thinking about who your publisher is and where they're pushing it, I think is something that gets missed in like a lot of projects, not just publishing. But I had that experience as well, where my first book did so well that my publishers were like, hey, let's try and publish your planner. And then we did a like gift box. It was a vision board kit, and it came with like a workbook, but it's a gift box. So it's not going to be on the shelf next to my other book. We ran into like, how do we market this? Where do we put this in the stores? And it was new territory for them and for me. I'm not sure I'll exceed the advance on that one. And the planner was really like, I think when I was creating planners, I was creating them when a lot of people weren't creating them. I like kind of right place, right time. And then when we wanted to like scale up, I don't know that we scaled up enough to like have a footing in the market in a place that there was like a need for one. And so it's so true. It's like, even with other client work, it's just finding that kind of right combination and like finding that harmony between all the factors that you're dealing with. And it's good to hear. It's humbling to hear that as well. I like hearing the transparency. You've always been very transparent. And I really see a lot of value in actually how you're pricing your courses, because I think that a lot of people who want to learn from you are going to be at that stage in their career where they can't afford or are way too terrified to spend $500. And Katie and I have navigated this as well, where we're like, well, this is a 30-hour course. We simply can't afford to price it that low. How can we price it where people can still access it?
And it's like the bulk of what we do is education too.
And that's a different thing. For me, I think it's also an optics thing where if I were making really expensive courses, I already struggle with this where people perceive me as being like an online courses person.
Right.
And I'm like, I haven't done a Skillshare class in years, and I feel allergic to doing them because I don't want it to become the thing that is what people know me as, because it's just a different thing. There's people and that's their primary source of income.
Right.
Great. And I'm happy for them. And it's just not the identity that I have as like a creative and creator.
Was it hard to accept that? Like, were you ever like, wait, maybe I do want that? Or like, did you kind of know all along, this is fun, but it's not who I am?
It's like, I love to do it, but ultimately it's about like how you want people to perceive you. To me, it's very important to me for whatever reason that people perceive me as being a working artist, like someone who is doing client work, who is engaged with the world of commercial art in that way. And to some people, it doesn't matter to them. But to me, it just felt really important to me. I feel like having people perceive me as being a working artist helps validate the information that I do share when I do like online classes and things like that. Because I think there are a ton of people now who are excellent teachers who like have built their entire career around teaching and actually have very little experience interfacing with clients. And then it becomes this tricky thing where the advice that they're giving is really good for artwork creation, but not necessarily for monetizing that artwork creation in all the ways that you can. It's good for doing it in like an influencer way or like whatever, but it doesn't necessarily like get you client work. And I think that that is like that tricky thing. We struggled with it when we were in college too. I'm sure everybody had teachers in college that like some of them were like working professionals that were still in the field doing stuff. And some that like hadn't worked in the field for like 20 or 30 years. Both paths are valid because not everybody that's a working professional is a good teacher. You can have someone who's like a kick-ass designer that is like an awful teacher, and you don't really learn much from them other than just like whatever osmosis you can get from observing them in their work life. And then there's people that are like amazing teachers, but have really devoted the second half of their life or like however much of their life to teaching and don't have their finger on the of like current work is.
I really appreciate schools where they like require the professors to have a hand in something outside of teaching, but I understand the push and the pull too, because like Ilana and I spend so much time working on creating educational content that it becomes, okay, we have less time to spend on our client work, but it's really important to us that we're both still a part of that world. Yeah. So we don't become like irrelevant or we like don't know what we're talking about. But yeah, I mean, I definitely feel that like, okay, my time is shifting into now creating the content about the things. It's a really delicate balance to make sure you're involved in both worlds for sure.
I was going to say it's also tricky because it depends on what kind of client work you're getting. Like it'd be a lot easier for me to share more process and make more like easy, more low-key educational content if I was allowed to do that for like the majority of my client work. I get in this situation where the perception of me as a creator is that I'm only available for these highfalutin jobs or like whatever. I try to make it clear that I'm open to all kinds of work, but it doesn't change what comes into my door that much. Even now, like I'm pitching on a thing that wouldn't come out until 2026. Then I wouldn't be able to like share any of the process of it until 2026. Then what am I doing? I'm spending a lot of extra time recording the process of me working on that thing now to maybe share it in 2 years. And so it's hard to feel motivated to like.
Yeah, it takes a lot of steam out of it when it's like such a long timeline.
If you're spending so much time documenting it, then you also run into the situation of like, am I creating this to create content or am I creating this because I'm enjoying the process of creating?
Yeah, the answer for me is that I only enjoy the process of creating when I am just like in flow and completely lost in it. And you can't do that if you're trying to like get good angles and make sure you have a good shot or like whatever. It's really hard because you're constantly being taken out of flow. It's very tricky.
It's like counterintuitive to like record yourself drawing, but I also enjoy watching other people do that and seeing their process. So it's like a double-edged sword, and it's just not for everyone, for
It's
sure.
also why so much of it is staged. Most people that are sharing
Yeah.
are just staging it after the fact and redrawing things that they've already figured out and drawn, which is why you see, it's like, wow, they did it the first time. You know, it's like, no, they didn't.
That's a perfect circle.
It'd be so boring to watch something actually work in real time. Like it would be like enjoyable in its own watching grass grow kind of way, but watching someone just try to draw a straight line 50 times or whatever, like scooting the sketches around and erasing little texture things, like that wouldn't be very fun to watch over and over again.
Yeah, you'd have to do it in like hyper speed, because we spend so much time drawing the same letter or like doing something really, really rough and just refining. And that's a
I'm a
beautiful
little bit
process.
ridiculous about it too.
Yeah, you are. And
I'll start from the beginning again instead of like just fixing like a small mistake. Sometimes I don't know what my brain is doing, but I don't want nobody watching that. You don't need to see behind that curtain. I do want to make sure we cover this one question because Ilana and I are writing a book right now, speaking of books, about finding your style and your creative voice and navigating that and then expressing it in a way that doesn't feel gross and that feels like authentic and not icky marketing-y. I think your work is so interesting because you do try so many different mediums and you do so much experimenting, but it's like so clear when I see your work. I'm like, that's Jessica Hische. I can tell from a mile away. So I was curious to hear your thoughts around creative voice and like your sort of advice on how, if it's important to have a theme or threads through your work and what you found for your own work, and then what your advice would be to other creatives around that.
Yeah, there's a few things. I think the most straightforward way to finding your artistic style is just to figuring out what mediums you enjoy working in. Some people enjoy working in like a billion different mediums, but then there's one that really shines as like if I've got an hour to do something, what is the thing I would choose? You know, what weapon would I choose in the end battle?
And what is yours, like the pen tool?
Yeah, mine is like, so I do all my sketches in Procreate and I do all my finals in Illustrator for the most part. I've been evolving my process a little bit for the kids' book stuff and doing more hand-drawn stuff in Procreate. But even then, it's not like a fancy Procreate. If I recorded myself doing it, I would not be Arlie Moran or whatever. Her stuff's fancy as hell. So yeah, that's generally the way that I work. And then the thing that I would say in terms of making sure that your hand and voice shines through the work is not letting the technology do as many shortcuts for you as Adobe or whoever is always pushing at you. Because the issue with all of those things is they start erasing your hand when you're snapping to grid too much, when you're using pre-made shapes, when you're using certain tools that have a very specific vibe. Those things start to neutralize your artistic hand, and then people cannot see your hand in the work as much. The tool or the automation thing like outshines your voice and your hand. So that's something that I feel very strongly about. Like there's a couple reasons why I feel strongly about that. One, I feel like the little idiosyncrasies that happen when you're not trying to make things like perfect and copy pasting everything and snapping to grid and whatever are actually like where your hand shines through. And that's how people can pick out my work from someone who's creating identical work to me. I think there's that. There's also the idea that the process really matters to artists, and that speeding up your process while it makes the work more efficient and maybe makes you make a little bit more money might not be the path to happiness for you. So like for me, the longer I can spend in the weeds of working, the happier I am. And so whenever there's something that comes along that's like, oh, well, this thing is going to make it so much faster to get to the end. This is going to change this thing and you're going to be able to do it faster. And I'm like, I don't want to do it faster. I want to do it slower, because if I do it slowly, I'm making decisions along the way. I'm getting into that flow state. I'm actually like enjoying being a creative. Whereas if I'm working super quickly and just trying to get it done and trying to be as efficient as possible, all that I'm doing is just being like really good at capitalism. You know, I'm not being a good artist. I'm just being a very good capitalist. I'm being an efficient worker. And I don't necessarily think that art needs to be that. Obviously, there's a fine balance between like what your time is worth and what you can charge. And if there's a project that comes along where they have like no money for the project, by all means, like use every shortcutty thing that you want to do, because then you can rebalance the scales in terms of what you're paid by making the process more efficient. But ultimately, you want to be in a space where you can charge appropriately to have the process that you want and not have to speed it up just for the sake of making more money in less time.
Yeah.
That was so well said. I'm sure you saw us nodding our heads the whole way. Katie, do you have any follow-up to that? Do you have
No,
do you have
I
follow-up to
love
that?
especially the first part of that answer with the idiosyncrasies, because I really feel this and have seen the progression in my own work of like, I think just as we learn something new, you just innately want to do it by the book, or like you think there's like a right way to do it and you're trying to like follow the guidelines, and you're a lot more likely to be snapping to grid and correcting every mistake. But the more that I get along in my career and just in life, I see this outside of art too. I'm trying to unlearn perfectionism, because all the things that I gravitate towards and all the things that I'm like stunned by and mesmerized by, whether it's like somebody's personality or what they're doing in the world or art, it's like all the little individualized moments that are almost like little mistakes or slips or things that it just makes it feel unique and special. I'm like, okay, so I need to let some things go and stop being so meticulous about everything. I mean, that there's a certain point where meticulousness is like part of my personality, and that's okay. And like I can be detailed and I can get into the nitty-gritty, but yeah, just letting some life into it has just like totally revolutionized the way that I exist.
It's funny because I'm like on the opposite side of that spectrum from Katie, where
Yeah.
I find that I like things to be the maximum simplistic thing, like as
Well, but it doesn't have
how
to be
you just
perfect.
Well, yeah. And
right.
I mean, no one would look at the work that I've done in the last 5 years and call it elaborate. I feel like my work has gotten more and more stripped down over time. And it's sort
Yeah.
of why I've been doing a lot more logo work and things like that. But like, even if I make a logo that is a 4-letter word in black and white, there's still so much
Yeah.
of my hand in the
Yeah,
way
nuance.
are drafted. Yeah, exactly. Where if someone else had to draw the exact same thing, it would look completely different from mine. We just wouldn't land on the same solution, even if we were trying to create the exact same thing.
I think the like term simple when I was in design school like seemed to be this have like negative connotations, but now I think it doesn't necessarily do justice to those little nuances, but it's also like can be such a loaded, like something can be simple and be like so layered and have so many intricacies to it that maybe you wouldn't see or that aren't as apparent, or like so much thought.
Yeah, we don't create simple art when we first start out because all of the intricacies hide our ineptitude. So like the longer you've been doing it, the better you get and the less reliant you are on decoration to hide the mistakes in your work. And so like you don't feel comfortable making visually simplistic work until you're able to create things that have less mistakes in them.
Wow.
Well, it's
That's
also just
amazing.
interesting to see what you're drawn to based on like how you perceive the world internally. We've been doing a lot of deep diving into this as we're writing the book with ourselves as the test subjects. We're like our own little lab rats. And Ilana has a lot of like chaos going on in her brain. And there's like a lot of thoughts ping-ponging around and a lot of ideas. And she's like pulled in a lot of directions. So like when she's creating her environment, she wants things to be very calm and she wants to be able to focus through the noise. It's super cool to like start diving into how our own internal psychology and like how we interact with the world also comes across in like our style and what we're drawn to and all that kind of stuff. It's fun to geek out about.
Yeah. And one of the things to think about in terms of like trying to find a style, you have to sort of have in mind what are the kind of industries that you want to work for. Because if you really want to work for young kids and that sort of thing, you do sort of have to like cull your portfolio to be a place where art directors that are doing stuff for young kids are going to see it and not be like, this will upset parents.
Yeah. This
or
is
like,
obscene.
it's obscene, which happens to people, like if you make stuff. I was just talking to someone else who had an artist on their podcast that had like a piece of art that had the C word in it. And like it cost them a project because a client went to their website and they were like, we can't hire this person because they have a project with a C word in it. And it's just like, it's something that you have to sort of think about a little bit.
It's funny because right behind your head is the F bomb.
I know it has F-bomb.
I love that one.
Is that spray paint or is it
No,
three-dimensional?
it's a installation piece.
That's what I thought. I
So
could
it's-
see the shadows, but it's like kind of blurred. So I was like, I'm pretty sure those are shadows. It's really
It says,
cool.
give me a fucking chance.
I love it.
Okay, I wanted to talk to you because you've worked with so many dream clients. So many people would agree that you've like hit so many milestones that people are like, that is the peak of the design career mountain. And we're always like thinking about how cool it will be to get to the peak of the mountain. And it kind of from the outside looks like you're at the peak of the mountain, but it also doesn't look like you're slowing down. It looks like once you've gotten there, you're like exploring other avenues and seeing how far you can stretch your creativity and your curiosity. But I'm wondering if you've had moments of like hitting these huge milestones that little Jessica would have been like, holy shit, I'm killing it. And have you been like, okay, what now? Like, how has your definition of success or your perception of like a fulfilling career evolved over time?
Well, I think when I started out, I just had no expectation about
Oh, really?
all
You
gonna
were
be.
just like, I'm here for the ride.
Yeah, I just like was really excited to just create and work and like didn't really care who it was for. When the projects came in that were like really exciting, I'd be like, oh, wow, and like just pumped. But I
Yeah.
also feel like I get really excited over projects that other people would perceive as being like less exciting. Because
Oh, I
like,
saw your like PTA shirt on your portfolio. Like that was like,
so
how
I
cute.
did not win this year. Another parent won this year.
Oh,
So
I
that
didn't realize it
was
was a competition.
every year they do a competition for for 2 years.
That's hilarious that you didn't
Do
win.
you know the parent that won?
I do. Because he wrote me, he like DM'd me on Twitter to like ask me like a color question, like about his design. And I was like, congratulations, I guess,
It's like, do you know who this is, PTA? Do you
No,
know who you're
it
dealing
was
with?
funny because
That's
like
so
I had
funny.
other parents writing, like texting me that were judging the competition. And they were like, is this your design? I really liked this one. I was like, no, that one's not mine. I was like, everybody's really stepped it up this year, I think.
That's so funny.
That's amazing.
But no, there's like I like one of my favorite projects from last year was doing a logo for the general insurance. Not a thing that people would be like, you've peaked. The general insurance is it, but I just have all these like super fond memories of those commercials while being at my grandma's house. And it's like, call the general, save some time or like whatever. And it's just
Yeah.
like this core memory. And I was like, oh, I get to work on a thing that's like a core memory for me. That's so fun. I don't know. I feel like what my career has told me over and over again is that there really are just like so many interesting projects out there and you just never know what's going to come across your plate. The idea that like have worked on a thing and that's the peak. It's never the peak. There's always another thing. There's always another thing that's a peak for a different reason. I definitely feel like trying to be relevant is something that I actively try to do now. I feel like I'm in this interesting valley of age and experience where I'm no longer a young person. I'm still young, but I'm not a young person. But I'm not like an elder to the point where everyone's like, yay, we need these elders around because there's not enough elders. There's this weird time frame when you're like in your late 30s to maybe like 55, where you're not young and you're not old. And you just kind of have to like navigate it as best you can without being that Steve Buscemi, like, hello, fellow young people thing, because I'm not 24 anymore. And I don't want to try to outshine the 24-year-olds that are super enthusiastic about what they're doing. I want to find my place like within that space to be a person who's doing work that they love, but who isn't trying to compete with people that have this crazy newfound enthusiasm for the field. So trying to figure out the work that feels appropriate for my level of enthusiasm for the field is like something that I kind of work on. And I kind of just know, I'm just like, I'm not trying to like be the new hot thing. I'm just trying to stay around and have people not get tired of me until I can be like 60 and everybody's like, you're awesome. Yeah. Lifetime achievement, like I'm just waiting out till like I can just try to stay on board until that happens. now I feel like the things that I'm interested in, it's less about like scoring that project or doing that high profile thing. And it's more about like developing a deeper relationship with people that work in fields that I'm interested in. I've done a few cool movie title projects, but I'm like, wouldn't it be great if I actually felt like I infiltrated that world in a real way? Where I like had a lot of friends within the movie title world and went to LA and had meetings with people and whatever. In the past, it's always just been like project to project, and that project's really cool. And they do lead to different things and different opportunities. But now it's like, I feel like I'm in this place where I really want to mingle a little bit more in these other adjacent industries in terms of like the design leaderiness, be able to bond with people that would be clients instead of just waiting for them to like pop into my inbox for a one and done. That's kind of where I'm at. I just want to like figure out ways to get more ingrained into fields that I think are cool and interesting. I've always wanted to do stuff for like the music industry and things, but also know that it never pays any money. Now I feel like I'm at a point where I have enough other things going on where I'm like, if I really wanted to lean into that and just like do a bunch of cool projects that don't pay very much, just because I feel like being in that space, I can do it. And it's something that you can only do when you're super young or when you're at this position of power and privilege where you can kind of like take on the cheap projects again.
I think that's a general progression of life for a lot of people. Like 20s and 30s is like broader and faster and bigger. And then as you get older, you're like deeper, more well-rounded, more time in each place. So it seems like that's definitely playing out in your life.
Yeah. And I'm not a super spiritual person. Like I grew up Catholic and was that for a long time. And I have no idea what happens after all this, but I am like a big legacy person and just trying to like make sure that everything I do becomes a record of who I actually am, what I mean to the people around me and my relationship to the work and all this kind of stuff. Because if there isn't anything after this, then the only way to like live on is by having like an actual impact on other people and being a core memory for some people, whether it's through your work or through things that you do for them. And so I don't know, I just like, I'm very conscious of that. Like I want the things that I do to mean something just in case it's lights out after all this. I think that's kind of my focus in a lot of my work is how do I make stuff that means something to someone.
That's beautiful. I feel like that's probably a good place that we can just wrap up. It would feel kind of weird to ask little rapid fire questions after that.
Well, I don't know.
Unless you want to, we have
I'm curious.
like 2 minutes.
Yeah, we have literally 2 minutes. I'm curious if there's any like recent, I know we talked about like not just showing up and being like, here's my Amazon affiliate link. Are there any purchases that you have made lately, whether it's from another designer or like completely unrelated or a book you read? Are there like two things that are top of mind that you've come in contact with lately that you're like, this was great? 10 out of 10. Maybe it was a jar of pickles. I don't know.
That Rick Rubin book shook me to my core. Have you guys read it yet?
It's in my cart. It's in my Goodreads.
I recommended it to this gal who I sort of mentor a little bit. Like we were just kind of like buddies, but she always like texts me when she's having like a existential crisis about AI or something like that. I was like, you need to read this book. It's going to make you feel better. And she read it and she was like, you weren't kidding. And like every page is dog-eared. And she was like, I think this is my religion now is this book. And I was like, I feel the same way. So highly recommend Rick Rubin's book. It's something like The Creative Way of Being or something like that. But just look it up. It's great. It's also well designed. It's very pretty. I also have been very into my fashion lately and I've been buying lots of fashion things, but I'm doing my best to not let my whole wardrobe just be Rachel Comey because she's my favorite fashion designer of all time.
Those are great. I love both of those.
Yeah, I like both of those things. I'm trying to think what else. I've been cooking hard-boiled eggs in my electric kettle. Like kind of
love that for you.
I do that.
Amazing.
I cook like 3 or 4 hard-boiled eggs a day. I'm just an hard-boiled egg.
You're fit girly now. So if anyone is new to the lovely work of Jessica Hische, where can people find you?
People can find me on Instagram at Jessica Hische. They can find me on Threads, which is my replacement Twitter, also at Jessica Hische. And then my website is jessicahische.is/awesome. And here I will also plug my new children's book that is coming out called My First Book of Fancy Letters. And that is available for pre-order. And I have a link to that in my bio on the socials. So go pre-order that because
we'll put that in the show notes.
That's amazing. And I haven't seen it yet, obviously, but I'm getting American Girl doll my first experience with hand lettering, which was my American Girl doll book vibes. And I'm very excited to learn more. If people are in the area, you have a storefront.
Yes, I have 2 stores. The one that is probably the most immediately applicable to your audience is Jessica Hische Friends, which is below my studio here, also known as JH&F, so that I don't have to spell my name for strangers. That one's sort of like a designy, gifty store where it has art books and beautiful, useful things. And I have another store called Drawing, that's drawing with an L thrown in there, which is how children and Philadelphia people say drawing. That one is an all ages art supply store in Temescal Alley in Oakland that leans kid, but it's very fun and bright.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show and for putting up with all of our tech issues.
Yeah.
That was a doozy, but we are
Yeah.
so grateful for an opportunity to talk to you, and we can't wait to read the book.
We figured it out.
Yay. All good things.